Chapter 31. Potion. Dunsmith stared at Klein with his gray eyes for a full minute without a word. Klein did not cower under the pressure of the silence and his gaze. He continued, locking his eyes with Dun. You must understand that once you consume the potion, there will be no room for regret. Finally, Dun spoke again in a deep, emotionless voice. Klein grinned and said, I know, but I respect the voice in me. First, Sleepless does not meet my requirements. It was the same for Spectator, which he heard from the Tarot Club based on description. He was unsure when he would come into contact with other Beyonder pathways. A slow remedy could not work for an urgent situation. Therefore, there was no need for him to wait. By the same logic, Corpse Collector was eliminated as well, leaving the two choices, Mystery Prior and Seer. Under the premise that potions of the same sequence were equally dangerous and him unable to obtain more information, as well as the fact that both Mystery Prior and Seer met his requirements, then regardless of whether Emperor Roselle was making a passing remark or if he really regretted not choosing Apprentice, Marauder, and Seer, it was enough to tip the balance in his heart. Furthermore, he could tell from the diary that as long as he figured out the true essence of digestion and acting, he would be able to avoid the negative effects the potion would bring to an illusory, significant extent. As for the murmurings and enticements that could drive people to corruption and madness, he had already encountered that even without being a Beyonder. All right. Dun stood up and picked up his half-top hat. As he put it on, he said, Follow me down. Klein nodded and gave a gentleman's bow in gratitude. Tap, tap, tap. Both of them ventured down, their footsteps echoing through the silent and vast stairwell and passageway. Klein suddenly felt gripped by anxiety as he tried to find a topic of conversation. Captain, you mentioned that taking the potion would not directly give me the corresponding knowledge on mysticism, that I'll only have the qualifications to learn it. Then, where does the basic knowledge of mysticism come from? Did our predecessors risk their lives for it, or obtain it via other means? Every time he went underground, he would find the air especially fresh. Clearly, the ventilation was excellent. However, the occasional gust of wind made one shiver. Dun glanced at him, the darkness in his gray eyes appearing abnormally deep. He answered calmly, Is as you said, one of experimentation, summarization, and enhancement. Second, being bestowed by the gods. Third, the dangerous murmurs that others can't hear do not only growl and roar senselessly. At times, they will describe some matters regarding mysticism. But according to what I know, people who truly listen to the murmurs on a long-term basis have gone mad without exception, or they would fall to corruption and become monsters. Of course, we must thank them. The notebooks they've left behind are precious treasures in the field of mysticism. Human lab rats? The underground passages cold humidity made. Klein shuddered suddenly. Then, would my luck enhancement ritual, which turned into social network magic, eventually lead to similar effects due to the crazy and horrible murmurs? At the intersection, Dun did not proceed toward Cheney's gate, nor did he turn to the weapons, materials, and archives. Instead, he took Klein to the left and approached St. Selena Cathedral. Midway, he stopped. It was unclear what he touched to open a secret door. This is our Nighthawks team's alchemy room. I will get old Neil to retrieve the seer potion formula and the corresponding materials from inside Cheney's gate. You have pretty good luck. The goddess has blessed you with her favor. We should still have the materials needed for 2 seer potions. If not, you would have to wait a long while. Dun pointed at the room behind the door. Wait here. Later, watch old Neil concoct the potion. It's the most basic part of mysticism studies. Oh, do not randomly touch things in there. They are either very dangerous, expensive, or both. With that said, Dun added like before. Oh right, I forgot something again. Your becoming a Beyonder is a result of you having to face danger and the need to find the notebook. The meritorious deed was only a part of it. Therefore, you will not be a member of our team for the time being. You will still be a civilian staff member with a corresponding salary. You will still do what I instructed you to do previously. One additional thing is to learn more about mysticism with old Neil. You can arrange the time with him. All right. Other than feeling a little disgruntled by the lack of a pay rise, Klein was in full agreement with the rest. According to Dun, there was still the process of learning and grasping one's newfound powers after consuming the potion. If he were to become a formal member immediately and participate in paranormal missions. His death was certain. Dunn turned around and walked 2 steps towards the intersection when he suddenly turned back. Another thing. I knew it. Klein was already used to the style of his captain. "We got something out of the Secret Order's actions," said Dunn with his usual expression. "It's unlikely they will provoke you in the near future, but don't be careless. It has to do with them being temporarily unable to confirm whether the Antigonus family's notebook is important to them. From what we discovered, they have preserved some of the ancient customs, and we can confirm that they are related to the Solomon Empire and the corrupted nobles of that period." "Got it. Thanks, Captain," said Klein as he exhaled. This was also one of the reasons why he did not wish to wait, grasping the chance of becoming a Beyonder in such a hurry. As he watched Dunn leave and confirmed that he would not turn his head to say more, Klein slowly walked into the alchemy room. The room had long tables. There were test tubes, pipettes, scales, and crucibles. It resembled a chemistry laboratory from his previous life. It was just more Spartan and ancient. Other than that, there was a huge cauldron, a dark wood ladle, a translucent crystal ball, and other items. The dark sacred emblem and other strange emblems were visible everywhere. They gave the room a tint of mystery. Klein looked around with interest, but he was not stupid enough to touch the things. After a while, he heard footsteps. Old Neil carried a tiny silver chest with complicated patterns. He was still wearing his unique classic black robe that seemed anachronistic, matched with a felt hat with a rounded edge of the same color. "Lad, I never expected you to choose Seer." Old Neil put down the chest and used his somewhat turbid red eyes to size up Klein. "Your personality is just like mine when I was young. You just don't want to follow the masses. Not bad. Light these few gas lamps and close the door." "All right." Klein tried hard not to tremble as he lit each gas lamp in the alchemy room. He made dim light rule over the place once again. Tack, tack, tack. The secret door was closed. He turned back to see the white-haired and deep-wrinkled old Neil using a bunch of strange tied tree branches to scrub the black cauldron. The concoction of a sequence potion is extremely simple, at least for sequence 7 and below. There's no need for a special flame or any additional ritual, much less an incantation. There's no need for one to participate in it spiritually. All one needs to do is go according to the formula's steps, add the precise amounts, and mix it. That will be all. Old Neil's wrinkles seemed to bloom from his smile. "For real?" Klein questioned in surprise. "This sounds as simple as my luck enhancement ritual. Man, it's quite frightening when you come to think of it. Perhaps it's a gift of the gods. Praise the lady." Old Neil drew a haphazard circle over his chest. Following that, he opened the silver chest and pulled out goatskin parchment that exuded antiquity. The yellowish-brown goatskin unfurled inch by inch, revealing words on it. Klein looked from a distance and realized it was in Hermes, a language he was very familiar with. It was written in ink that resembled blood, seemingly having its fluidity remain intact. But other than that, it did not seem extraordinary in any way. Seer, 100 milliliters of pure water, 13 drops of night vanilla liquids, 7 gold mint leaves. Klein silently recited the formula's content, but the rest of it was blocked by old Neil's wrist, preventing him from reading it. Pure water is water that is repeatedly distilled. Thankfully, I made some previously, so there's no need to waste time on it. While old Neil gave the introduction, he took a large sealed glass bottle from the table with great familiarity. He took off the stopper and poured about 100 milliliters of pure water into the cauldron without much thought. Klein did not dare ask, afraid he would affect old Neil's concoction. After all, he was the one drinking the potion. 13 drops of night vanilla juices. This can be extracted and stored as an essential oil ahead of time. Old Neil took out a tiny brown bottle from the silver chest, and with a pipette, and dripped 13 drops into the cauldron in a relaxed manner. A faint but easing fragrance emanated, making Klein feel an abnormal sense of peace. 7 gold mint leaves. Old Neil picked up a silver-patterned can and removed its lid. With his bare hands, he picked up a few leaves and scattered it into the cauldron. He caught a whiff of a fresh and stimulating scent. 4, 5, 6, 7. Perfect. Old Neil chuckled and looked at the potion formula on the goatskin. 3 drops of poison hemlock. This isn't something you should drink randomly. It can cause your entire body to numb to the point of death. In ancient times, it proved to be the best option for committing suicide. It's not like I'm silly. Klein lampooned. Old Neil changed pipettes and dripped the poison hemlock into the cauldron. The mixture caused a strange smell that freshened one's mind. 9 grams of dragon bloodgrass powder. Old Neil took his time to reach his hand into the silver chest and pulled out a transparent test tube. There was some deep black powder inside. He used a beaker and a scale to measure 9 grams of powder and poured it into the cauldron. He then stirred the mixture twice with the darkwood ladle. The laid-back process of making the concoction made Klein a little worried. In fact, the materials from before were just supplemental. The exact amount doesn't really affect the final outcome. Should I put a little bit more? Old Neil made a joke. The last 2 is what's crucial. The amount can be slightly lowered, but it cannot be too far from the requirement, or your enhancement can fail. Oh, the quantity cannot be any more, even just by a bit. If so, you will have to be treated for mental problems. It's not impossible to die immediately. Klein immediately tensed up as he saw Old Neil pull out a black glass bottle from the silver chest. Lavos squid's blood, 10 milliliters. This kind of squid is considered an extraordinary biological species. It is clearly mutated. It is covered in mystery. Its blood will rapidly break down under sunlight and lose its unique qualities. It has to be stored in opaque material. Old Neil's tone no longer sounded relaxed. He quickly and carefully retrieved 10 milliliters of blood with a test tube. The blood was blue like the sky. From time to time, it produced illusory bubbles as though it was connected to the spiritual world. After pouring the blood inside the test tube, the remaining drops are ignored as a form of precaution, whispered Old Neil. The moment the blue blood entered the cauldron and made contact with the liquid from before, it produced bubbling sounds. The surrounding light was dyed with a light blue tinge, making Klein feel a strange sense of distance but also familiarity. It felt like the feeling of being in a mother's womb. It elevated a human's soul. The final item. Star crystal. 50 grams. Old Neil's voice sounded in Klein's ears, jolting him awake as he looked at the table. In the old gentleman's hand was a piece of extremely pure crystal. Furthermore, the crystal appeared gelatinous, as though it was jelly from Earth. It lacked hardness. Under the blue light's illumination, it reflected bits of light, as it seemed to contain a resplendent void of stars within. This is excellent material for the creation of divination crystals, just a little less in consideration of any mistakes. As Old Neil measured, he used a tiny patterned silver blade to extract the crystal. Pure water, night vanilla, gold mint leaves, poison hemlock juice, dragon bloodgrass, Lavos squid blood, and star crystal make up a seer. At that moment, Klein could not help but recall the formula. With everything done, Old Neil poured in a few blocks of star crystal into the cauldron. Sizzle. Illusory fog instantly spewed forth, turning the alchemy room into a blur. Klein seemed to see a vast array of stars amid the fog and felt like he was being observed by an invisible existence. A few seconds later, the fog dissipated. Old Neil used the darkwood ladle and scooped out some sticky dark blue liquid. It had strange characteristics, gooey and inseparable. Not one bit was left in the black cauldron. The dark blue liquid was poured into an opaque cup before Old Neil pointed at it. It's done, your seer potion. Chapter 32, Spirit Vision. Klein looked at the dark blue gelatinous liquid, finding it hard to describe it as either a block or cup of liquid. He swallowed his saliva and said in great difficulty, "Am I to drink it just like that? Is there no need for any other preparations? Like a ritual, an incantation, or a prayer?" Old Neil acknowledged tersely before saying, "Preparation? There is. Get a cup of Intis Ormer grape wine, suck on a Desi cigar, then whistle a relaxing tune, and dance an upbeat court dance. You can do a tap dance if you prefer that. Finally, play a round of Gwent cards." When he saw Klein's expression turn dumbfounded, Old Neil laughed and summarized what he had just said. "If you feel nervous. You are quite humorous, aren't you?" The corners of Klein's mouth twitched as he resisted the urge to draw his gun. He put his cane down and extended his right hand. As though he held something heavy, he raised the opaque cup. The smell of the potion was faint and seemingly ethereal. "Lad, do not hesitate. The more you hesitate, the more nervous and afraid you will be. That will only affect the absorption that follows," said old Neil with his back facing Klein. It was as though he had said it casually. It was unknown when he arrived by the nearby water basin. He turned on the tap and washed his hands. Klein nodded silently and took a deep breath. Just like he was back when he was a child, he pinched his nose and drank it like medicine. He moved the opaque cup to his mouth and tipped his head, drinking it down with a gulp. A cool and smooth feeling quickly filled his oral cavity. It then flowed through his gullet and into his stomach. The sticky, dark blue liquid seemed to grow out thin and long tentacles, bringing stimulation and coldness to every cell in Klein's body. He could not help but convulse as his vision rapidly went into a blur. All colors seemed to saturate. The reds were redder, the blues were bluer, and the blacks were blacker. The rich colors blended like an impressionist painting. Klein had seen such a scene before. It was back when he was questioned by the spirit medium, daily. At that moment, his vision became a blur, and although his mind felt light, it was clear. He felt like a castaway floating in the sea. Slowly, his surroundings turned discernible. All the colors returned to their original as a grayish and blurry fog emanated. Around him were forms he found difficult to describe. There were transparent objects that did not seem to exist. Deep down, there were lustrous brilliances of different colors which seemed to possess life or contain immense knowledge. This is a little similar to what I saw during the luck enhancement ritual. As Klein instinctively looked down, he realized that he was still standing in his original spot, body convulsing. Suddenly, he came to a realization, causing his consciousness to sink abruptly and fuse with him. Boom. The fog quickly dissipated as the colors restored to normal. The bright, clear halo and the inexistent objects instantly vanished. The scene in the alchemy room returned to normal, but Klein felt his head swell. He felt like it was being yanked apart. Whatever he saw had countless afterimages. His ears were overwhelmed by an ethereal murmur. Hornacis, Phlegria, Hornacis, Phlegria, Hornacis, Phlegria. Klein felt a stabbing pain at his forehead as he quickly had thoughts of causing destruction to vent the discomfort in him. He frowned and hurriedly shook his head. Is your vision abnormal? Are you also hearing things you did not used to hear? Said old Neil, at his side with a concealed smile. Yes, Mr. Neil, what should I do? Klein tolerated the intense mania and asked. Old Neil chuckled. This is the resulting seepage of the potion's energy. You lack the means to control it. All right, do as I say. Think of an object in your mind, something common. Make it simple and easy. Klein quickly focused as he envisaged his own have-top hat woven from black silk. He recalled the feeling when he touched it and its exact shape. Place all your focus on it. Keep repeating that while creating the outlines. Does it feel a little better? Old Neil's voice penetrated into his mind like a serene song. Klein turned his focus bit by bit to the imagined top hat. He felt the murmurs subside into a whisper before they vanished. The afterimages he saw also stacked upon one another and no longer appeared a blur. Much better, said Klein after calming his mind of chaotic emotions and having exhaled. He looked down at his body and discovered that nothing abnormal had happened. He moved his limbs and with half anticipation and half doubt, asking, I succeeded? I'm now considered a seer. Old Neil pulled out a mirror-like mercury plate and shoved it in front of him. Look at your eyes. All right. Klein moved his fingers back and forth while having his vision trained on the fiery red. Old Neil thought for a moment before saying, to put it simply, the mainstream way of mysticism is to split non-physical parts of a human into 4 levels. At its core is the soul body, which is also everyone's basic spirituality. There is a school of thought that believes all biological creatures have spirituality and have a soul body. I'm not sure about anything else, but to mystery priors, the goal of cogitation and the method to increase our strength is directed toward the soul body. Outside the soul body is the astral projection. It is the means for the soul body to communicate with the spirit world and with the cosmos. It's considered an external manifestation of the soul body. Besides, it will be directly related to your personal ambition and your prevailing emotions. The scenes you see after consuming the potion are scenes your astral projection sees when it wanders through the spirit world. That world does not obey the laws of the physical world. It involves exceeding the concept of I, the limitless I, and the universe's I. The past, present, and future might be stacked upon one another, and that is the source of divination. In the spirit world, what you see is just an imagery, a symbol. You have to interpret it to understand its actual meaning. Divination and many magic spells are cast through the astral projection. Do not mistake its relationship and differences with a soul body. One is just a body and the other is for form. Klein continued looking at the aura in between his fingertips and made the simple conclusion. Further out will be the body of heart and mind. From this point forth, it will combine with the physical body. It involves your brain and is an overall manifestation of your inferential abilities, your analytical abilities, your observational abilities, and identification abilities. Some potions will mainly raise this. Quite a number of magic spells target it as well. Old Neil explained in relatively great detail. The outermost layer is the ether body. It is a manifestation of your vital energies and physical form. The aura color you see is an external phenomenon of your ether body. In other words, apart from the spiritual bodies, ghosts, and specters you can see directly with spirit vision, it might also include certain existences that should not be seen. You can also see the ether bodies of others or their auras. From their thickness, brightness, and color, you can determine their health and emotional state. When your spirit vision improves and you grasp more mysticism knowledge, you will be able to discover even more details. You can even determine the lifespan of others. By the way, the emotional state I mentioned would also manifest itself because of your astral projection. When you go higher in sequence, your spirit vision will reach a relatively high stage. Someone else's astral projection will even be detectable. That way, you will learn even more things. This is a level only. Seers and mystery priors can attain. Some fellows even claim that the strongest form of spirit vision allows one to see anything in any place, including the past and future. However, I'm skeptical about it. It sounds quite powerful. Klein was almost turning eager. Old Neil coughed and continued. Let's return to the ether body and the colors of the auras. Your limbs and parts that are required in motion will appear red. Your head and brain surface will appear as purple. Spots that excrete waste will appear orange. The digestion system will appear as yellow. The heart and other regulatory systems will appear green. Your throat and other parts of the nervous system will appear blue. An entirely balanced body will make a body be cloaked in white. That is a symbol of health. Once it turns dark or the thickness thins, the color will change. That turned problematic. It means it's in a state of exhaustion or illness. The corresponding spot indicates that. In addition, the inner layer of the astral projection represents prevailing emotions. Red means passion and excitement. Orange means warmth and satisfaction. Yellow means happiness and extroversion. Green means calm and peace. Blue means coldness and stillness that one is in thought. White means brightness and eagerness to improve. Dark colors mean worry, sorrow, and silence. Purple means that spirituality is taking control of the lead, coldness, and estrangement. Klein silently memorized the information and stabilized his initial spirit vision. Good, you can look at other objects. Old Neil did not speak further as he nodded. Klein slowly turned his head and looked at Old Neil. Indeed, he saw different colors in different parts of his body. The aura was both thick and thin at different spots. The purple color at his head was brightest, and his limbs' redness was relatively dark. The overall whiteness to his body was somewhat faded as well. Indeed, he's getting on in age. Klein made a silent comment to himself. Only with what he saw did he feel that he had become a beyonder. I am now a beyonder. He shifted his gaze and carefully sized up Old Neil when suddenly he saw a translucent pair of cold and ruthless eyes without any brows in the void behind him. These nearly illusory eyes were staring at Old Neil intently, as well as him. This, Klein shuddered as he gaped, and said, "You have a pair of eyes behind you." Old Neil was taken aback before he forced a smile. Ignore them. Chapter 33, Switch. The moment Old Neil finished his sentence, the illusory pair of eyes that lurked in the darkness behind him vanished. Even in his spirit vision state, Klein was no longer able to identify traces of its existence. This is a characteristic of ritualistic magic, explained Old Neil with a chuckle. Fascinating. Is spirit vision an enhanced version of yin-yang eyes? Klein felt like a child who had received a new toy. In excitement, he turned his gaze away and began observing every corner of the room. He wanted to see the differences of the alchemy room with and without the spirit vision. The outlines of the objects in the dark, such as the tables, test tubes, scales, cups, and cupboards, did not look different from how it looked like without spirit vision. They did not emit any lights or colors. Objects without lives do not have any spirituality? Klein mumbled to himself as he swept his gaze toward the silver chest. Suddenly, he saw a vibrancy of colors. The colors were as blue as the sky, as resplendent as the stars, or as crimson red as burning flames. Materials from extraordinary beings still have some life in them, and are still active, even if the source is already dead. Klein deliberated on his words as he sought old Neil's help. A precise description is that they have remnant spiritualities. It is one of the crucial points of a successful potion concoction. It is also one of the reasons why a Beyonder will lose control. Dunn should have already informed you, explained old Neil frankly. He suddenly laughed, having recalled something. I remember that the formula of corpse collector requires a desiccated, mature, black-spotted frog. To consume that potion requires a lot of courage. Klein imagined a little and found it disgusting. He did not echo old Neil's words and turned his gaze to a dark area. However, there were no spiritual bodies or ghosts that he looked forward to seeing. Isn't it said that the world of spirits is everywhere? He asked out of curiosity. Old Neil chuckled tersely before saying, Punk, repeat after me. This is the headquarters of a Nighthawk squad. This is the ground beneath the Church of Evernight. There are many Beyonders here. Do you think we will allow spirits and souls to wander around here? Furthermore, the spiritual world and spirit are two different concepts. Klein felt a little embarrassed as he turned his head, pretending to look at the faint light from the gas lamps at the entrance. I get it. While speaking, the area between his brows began to spasm. What's happening? Just as Klein turned around to ask, he suddenly saw a figure standing quietly by the door at the periphery of the light. It appeared human, though its aura's colors and the darkness blended perfectly, making it impossible to discern. Hiss! Klein felt a painful spasm at his glabella. His vision turned chaotic as he focused his attention again, but there was no formless figure. Strange. He turned around and asked, Mr. Neil, the spot in between my brows is a little painful from spasms. Haha, this is very common. You are a new Beyonder. Spirit. Vision places a great burden on your soul body. Furthermore, it drains you constantly. Physical effects can be glabella spasms, headaches, oversensitivity, and minor bouts of hallucinations. And while viewing things with spirit vision, it's very easy to feel uncomfortable as a result of the unfamiliar surroundings. It's also very easy to have your emotions affected by others. These are things that require you to pay attention. You can become accustomed to and eliminate them with repeated practice. In addition, use it sparingly and end it in a timely fashion, answered old Neil with a smile. Why does it feel like you are delighted by this? Klein hurriedly asked for advice. Then, how do I exit from the state of having spirit vision? He had planned on mentioning the invisible figure he had seen, though when he heard of the minor bouts of hallucination among the symptoms, he struck that thought away. From the glabella spasm and headache, he could completely guess old Neil's answer. Like before, think of an item to divert your attention. It will bring you out of cogitation. Close your eyes and control your spirituality and repeatedly tell it to end. When you open your eyes again, you will discover that your spirit vision has ended. Old Neil described leisurely, and when he was done, added, Of course, that is the most trivial and clumsy method. We can repeatedly hint to ourselves in cogitation from practice to affect our spirituality. That way, you will have a simple switch. For instance, tapping at your glabella twice lightly would allow you to easily activate spirit vision. Another 2 taps will simply end it. As for how you set it up, it depends on your habits and preferences. Got it. Klein thought for a moment and planned to imitate old Neil to use tapping his glabella twice as a switch for his spirit vision. Tapping once was easily mistaken as an instinctive knock to his head, and tapping thrice could be a waste of valuable time in dangerous situations. As for actions like snapping fingers, they were too attention-drawing. He eased his focus and imagined the stacked spheres of light and re-entered a state of cogitation. Under old Neil's guidance, after repeated hints and practice, he finally set up his switch. He clenched his fist slightly and used his index finger's joint to tap at his glabella twice. Immediately, there were glowing auras of differing thickness and colors appearing before his eyes. After another 2 taps, everything returned to normal. "I've finally grasped it," he sighed with delight. Only then did he realize how exhausted he was, feeling like he could fall asleep at any time. His mind hurt as though he had stayed up for 3 nights. Old Neil said with a chuckle, "We are not sleepless. Every practice and every time spirit vision is used excessively, you will need some sleep. You can now go back and have a good rest. In the afternoon, go to Iron Cross Street where Welch's place is and walk around. Try your best to find clues about the Antigonus family's notebook as soon as possible. Tomorrow, I'll continue teaching you about mysticism. Of course, do not forget to read the historical documents." All right. Klein was arrangements in full agreement with Old Neil's. He picked up his cane and left the alchemy room. He watched the door close as Old Neil returned to the armory. Klein massaged his glabella and temples, and with the help of his cane, sauntered up the stairwell. At that moment, Dunsmith came from behind him with the corners of his lips hooked. With a deep gaze, he said, "I heard from Old Neil that you are a very suitable candidate. Even without cogitation, you were able to use spirit vision. Perhaps it's a unique trait of being a seer," replied Klein humbly. He guessed that Dunn had been watching the armory for Old Neil. Dunn slowed down and went ahead of Klein a little. After a few seconds of silence, he turned around and said, "You have to remember that curiosity killed the cat. It can also kill beyonders. Do not attempt to probe the murmurings you should not be listening to or seeing existences you should not see." All right. Klein knew this was another reminder of how beyonders lost control. After entering Blackthorn Security Company, he greeted Roseanne, who obviously did not know that he had become a beyonder. He slowly walked out the door and reached the streets where he took a trackless carriage to Daffodil Street. He nearly fell asleep on his return journey. It was still in the morning and the temperature was about 26 degrees Celsius. Klein pulled out a copper key from his waistband and opened the door to his home. There were still many items missing from his home. The living room and dining hall were still empty. Benson and Melissa had work or school, so they had both left early in the morning. Klein did not have the capacity to bother with anything else. He closed the door and briskly went to the second floor and entered the bookshelf-equipped bedroom that belonged to him. After taking off his tuxedo and hanging it on a clothing rack, he eagerly plunged into bed. The moment his head hit the pillow, he fell asleep. Klein was awoken by bright sunlight. He turned his head and slowly opened his eyes to discover the burning sun outside. "What time is it? Did I miss the tarot club in the afternoon?" He struggled to get up and walked to the clothing rack to take out his pocket watch from the pocket of the tuxedo's inner lining. Not only had he forgotten about the matter, he had forgotten to close the door to his bedroom and pulled the curtains to the oriel window. Klein pulled out the pocket watch and immediately felt relieved when he opened it. It was only slightly past noon. There was still a lot of time until the scheduled gathering at 3 in the afternoon. It was Monday, the day he would have a gathering with the hangman and justice. Klein went into thought as he tapped his glabella twice. The scene before him changed once again as he saw that his body had been restored to a bright luster. He tapped twice again and stopped his spirit vision. Relaxed, he went to the first floor and boiled a kettle of water. He placed some inferior quality tea leaves and chewed on some rye bread dabbed in a little butter. Afterwards, Klein flipped through historical materials and original Klein's diary. He began revising and consolidating his knowledge. At 2:57 p.m., Klein closed his book and capped his fountain pen before pulling the curtains. Immediately following that, he locked the bedroom's door, making the room turn abnormally dark. He tapped his glabella twice and activated spirit vision to survey his surroundings. After confirming that there were no invisible spiritual bodies in his room, Klein stopped the spirit vision and took out his pocket watch to check the time. Tick-tock, tick-tock. 1 minute before 3, he opened up his pace and, like before, walked 4 steps in a counterclockwise manner in a square shape. He chanted in Chinese softly. Only this time, he did not prepare any staple food. Klein closed his eyes as he felt the back of his hands turn itchy. It felt like the 4 black dots forming a square were protruding and projecting something. Hysterical shouts and alluring murmurs began resounding, but Klein realized that the headache was not as bad as the first time. It was not that he was unaffected, but that he was doing his best to stop himself from listening. As a beyonder, He had to have more self-control in such an environment. Soon, his body turned light as he floated up. He saw the grayish-white and blurry fog that emanated. Then, he saw dark red stars. Two of them had a minuscule connection with him, with an abnormal sense of familiarity. Klein looked at his blurry self and muttered in confusion, "The astral projection that old Neil mentioned?" He remained calm for a few seconds and again transformed the opulent divine palace with the tall bronze table under the domed ceiling, as well as the 22 high-back chairs that corresponded to the different constellations. Klein calmly walked to the seat of honor and made his body and face be immersed in thicker gray fog. He extended his right hand and tapped two familiar deep red stars and created a miraculous connection.